We always said in 2016, look, Britain by itself is a lot smaller market. When it leaves the European Union, it suddenly becomes a lot more vulnerable to a lot, should we say, of the other bigger fish out there in the international markets. And that has really been proved over and over again when we've gone to try and do trade deals. There haven't been, shall we say, as successful as the Brexiteers have wanted to, or as they've wanted to sort of crow about. We've talked about those in the past. But now we have this whole trade war. Donald Trump slapped 104% tariff on China. Will China respond with its own? I think likely in some way, shape, or form. But eventually that is going to come down to who has the more power in that, well, in those upcoming potential negotiations, whenever those may be. It will be the American consumer versus the Chinese supplier. Who has more power in that spat? However, back to us here. And people are always, asking the question, should we retaliate? What can we retaliate with? Well, I said last night on Geoscope, best way to retaliate, boycott. There's plenty of apps out there. If you want to boycott American products, go out, download one, start using it. If you want to start doing that, by all means, go for it. But so far, we have not responded. And bear in mind, neither has the EU. The EU was potentially looking at boycotting bourbon from America. They haven't done that. They've apparently dropped that. The EU still to sort of respond. Will they respond? Who knows? I've said before, we are in a war game scenario where the best move probably is not to do anything. Because if you put a tariff back onto America, that harms, even more UK consumers, UK businesses. Now, yes, the American tariff does harm UK businesses and UK consumers. But if you add another tariff, you hurt the UK more. And especially at a time where we are starting to get inflation under control. Inflation has now dropped down to like 3.75%, somewhere around there. And we are on track to get it down to 2%. Now, will these tariffs that Trump has done muddle that up? Possibly. If we put tariffs on, that will send that back up. So there are consequences to striking back. So don't think that Starmer trying to, do some sort of a negotiation, you can disagree with it. Depends what's in the deal. It depends what's in the deal, quite frankly. And we'll see. But this is a whole part of, once again, proving Brexit was wrong. Brexit was absolutely fundamentally wrong for the UK. Fundamentally wrong. And I think, as you've seen a lot of the Brexiteers, Daniel Hannan crashing out like crazy just over the couple of days over these tariffs. It's proven it, proven it wrong time and time again. What Trump has done is the final nail in the Brexit coffin. And I do think there is now more than ever really a case to really start looking and re-examining Brexit. So I do want to have a look at this, though. This came from the Mirror, and they get a British trade expert in to have a look at what's going on here for the UK, what these tariffs mean, and is it worth responding? Now, and as they point out, we are the smaller economy. And the thing is, in trade wars like this, the smaller economy always loses. So before we do get on into this, like I say, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this. So this coming from the Mirror, Brexit Britain relegated to bit part player in trade war as now 3 key powers emerge. So, Brexit Britain has been regulated to a big player on the world stage with three key powers emerging in its place, a trade expert has now said. Donald Trump has now upended decades of free trade using rules penned in Washington to adopted by global powers. But despite the US emerging as the world's only superpower following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Trump now believes that globalization and free trade has diminished its standing. In a sensational move, now strongly rejected by most economists, he slapped tariffs on virtually every nation on earth that exports into the US. While China and the European Union were amongst other countries considering retaliatory tariffs, the UK government has taken a more tentative approach, almost relieved to have been slapped with just 10% import tax. And like I say, that is a relief. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. But we are now going to have to see over the coming weeks, over the coming months, what the markets are like, what to react with. Is it actually worth opening negotiations with Trump? Is it actually worth it? I look at my Shakespearean insult calendar today, and it's from Richard III, and it says, dispute not with her, she is a lunatic. And you're like, is that the case? And bear in mind, I am all for diplomacy. I'm all for talking and, trying to see, can you do anything? Can you do anything on this? I think if we have and we exhaust every single, diplomatic option, then I'm fine with that. But it all depends what these talks are, what they're trying to do, and ultimately what Trump wants. And I think Starmer should be in the position to say, no, that is not acceptable to the UK. And, and if he turns around and just goes, okay, fine, we'll accept 10%. But hey, if that's it for the next, 3.5 years until, Trump leaves office, get the Democrat back in, please, restore some sense, maybe. But what we should be doing now is looking to other markets. We should be, again, looking now to the EU. We've got those negotiations coming up next month. We should be going to Canada and looking to do sectoral deals. We should be going to Mexico and once again doing sectoral deals with them. So there are options, but it's just pursuing them. And at the moment in time, Trump is unpredictable. You don't know what he will do. And as I've been saying, there's now rumors circulating there might be sectoral tariffs coming from Trump on top of these already existing tariffs. And of course, it is today that they take full effect. So is today Orange Wednesday? We've already seen the markets in Asia react very badly. Europe is like that. We'll see what happens, of course, with America today when their markets open later on today. But maybe today is Orange Wednesday. If Orange Monday was the reaction to Trump's tariff, Orange Wednesday could very well be the reaction to the implementation of the tariffs. Maybe, we end up with Tangerine Friday. Who knows, honestly. But the markets are doing as the markets do at the moment. And I think there's a lot of people desperately trying to buy the dip in the hopes that they can, be proved right. But we'll see. But anyway, on to what this trade expert has to say. So, Trump has this vision, and he realizes that time is not on his side, said the university professor Anthony Glees. He said he's almost 80 and he is showing it. He feels he has to get on with it. But while the UK's power on the global stage wanes, three other powerhouse economies are now stepping up to now secure world trade. He said, they said, the truth is that there are three big trade regimes in the world. The USA is the strongest with the GDP at 28 trillion, the EU at 20 trillion, and then China at 18 trillion. If he can break the EU and China, America will be secure for the rest of the 21st century. The UK's GDP is just $3 trillion. We are shrimps in the fight between the USA and China, watching now as whales decide how to best tear chunks out of each other. The big danger here is that as history shows that tariff policies are linked directly to aggressive nationalism, both in the 1880s when the German Reich introduced tariffs in the 1930s, and when the USA and even Germany did the very same. Wars then followed very swiftly. If America turns in on itself, we are at a massive risk from Russia, and Putin is enjoying every second of this mega psychodrama. There are those who, of course, think that Trump is now simply hitting China with the biggest weapon he has, an extra 50% on top of the 34% already achieved. If China, of course, dares to retaliate because he wants to end it with a deal, which will be a compromise, but it will still give the USA most of what it wants. Professor Glees stated that he believes Starmer clearly thinks of two contradictory things at the same time. On the one hand, he believes that the Trump tariff policy means a very definitive end to globalization as we've come to know it. And he's puffed, of course, the virtues, as he sees them, of tariffs for more than, of course, 40 years. On the other, Starmer thinks that Trump can be appeased if he is not threatened or dissuaded in any way that a deal is possible, that we could then take the punishment very gracefully and, of course, kiss the rod that is used to then thrash us. The EU seems to be following Starmer's lead on this. Brexit Britain is on its own. We are just a bit player. Despite, of course, King Charles's invite to Trump and his mother, of course, being Scottish, China has, of course, vowed to fight to the very end. Xi thinks he can hit big to its growth because China is now so rich and it has a much more massive growth in the past decade. Even if it stalls, Trump, because of the Trump tariffs, it will be fine. Meanwhile, of course, Trump seems very much determined to stick to a tariffs plan. Despite now the growing concerns from allies and business leaders, his critics believe that damage to the US economy could lead to inflation and higher prices for consumers, while the supporters argue that they are a blunt tool to now return manufacturing jobs to America while addressing the trade imbalances across the globe. Again, we can see here that, as I've advocated for, maybe the best move is just to do nothing. We are a minnow in a trade war between the whales, slapping each other with their tails. If we, tiny fish that we are, slapped, the US whale, would it even notice? And I do really think that we are in the war games scenario. The best move is just to do nothing. Because now what we should be doing is looking, how can we bypass the USA? Where can we get other things that we would normally buy from the US on? And we have seen a bit of movement to, American money now coming not only to the UK, but to Europe as well. And we have to see what happens now. It is, very unfortunately, it's a waiting game. It is a waiting game, and unfortunately, the consequences could be a global crash, maybe a global recession. Who knows? But I think we should now be preparing to protect our industries here in the UK. That means you're looking at probably a lot of investment, maybe nationalization. Who knows? But let me know what you think down below. And of course, as always, hit the like, hit the share button on your way out. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.